Welcome back, everyone. What is an environment where we can succeed repeatedly, where we have more chances to succeed than to actually not succeed? Is there something like a formula for success? What's a good way to decide, to communicate, to organize? I have asked Martin Pfiffner to be here because he wrote this book that I really, really love. I read the English version, which is called The Neurology of Business. The German version, which was the first version, is Die dritte Dimension des Organisierens. And it's about the structuring forces, requirements, principles that must be in place for things to work. Doesn't mean that they do work if we have them in place. But if we don't have them in place, the probability is much, much lower. I have seen Martin in action with Fortune 500 executive teams, and he is so well organized and he helped them organized better. I've seen him since over a decade now. So this stuff truly works, guys. Um, this book is pretty new, and I'm excited to have Martin Pfiffner on the show. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks for having me, Simon. Thanks for having me. It was nice to be together for a long time because we worked together, right?
Yes, yes. I had so many nice memories in preparation of this. And the three things that I want to cover with you. The first one is, what are the 10 big mistakes that we do? And then we go to how to organize for success. And in the third part, I want to hear Martin's journey as an entrepreneur, how you organize your business, your life. So what are the biggest mistakes that you are seeing right now?
Well, typically, it's almost the same pattern. The big mistake is actually it's a general one. It's also one that we still see in academia. It's the mistake of focusing on two sides of creating environments, and we're talking about structures here, right? Creating structures that allow or prevent that things will happen in an effective and efficient way. And these kinds of structures are reduced to, if I compare the organization with an organism, they're reduced to either the anatomy of the organization, or in other words, the org charts. So managers start with discussing the organization by drawing org charts on flip charts still nowadays. Or it's reduced also to the other side, to the physiology of the organism, to the processes, agile processes, but process view, scalable frameworks included, and so on. What we're missing is the third dimension, is the neurology of the organism, and that's the decisive one for success, because here you're creating the environment for decision, so to speak. Who decides about what, on what level, and based on what information, and so on. So creating an environment for success is creating that neurology in an organization. The third, what I call the third dimension, besides structure and process.
Another mistake you write about in the book is copying competitors. Why is that a bad thing?
That's quite interesting. I think it's a symptom of helplessness somehow, because they see that their organizations do not really work as they like, especially these times where everybody says, well, the Chinese are much faster than we are. We're much too slow in our decisions. We're taking decisions based on the wrong informations. You can't solve that with the anatomy of the body, and you can't solve it either with processes. Both are preconditions for success as well, but it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. The most decisive structure is the neurological structure, or in other words, the decision and communication structure of the organization. And they don't have, because universities don't have it in their view. They don't look at these things. And in practice, there's no models and methods available except for the one I'm working with, and we have been working with together also since many years. And that's why I think it's so important. It's also, it answers the questions beyond agile, so to speak, because people very often, that's still although we have all these agile processes and everything now, and of course you can do better, but basically in agility there has been a lot of progress once more within the last 10 or 20 years, and there will be taking KI other processes in the near future, other improvements in the near future, but nevertheless, it's still not sufficient. The organizations still do not work, although we have efficient and effective processes. And therefore they're looking for answers. If you don't have answers, you're looking at your competitor. But that's actually the classical mistake, because what we're saying is structure follows strategy. So your structure should be able to implement your strategy. And if you're copying the structure of our most successful competitor, then we're actually copying his structure, his strategy as well. And you can't beat the competitor with their own strategy, right? So if you did it in a bad way, then you shouldn't copy it in the first place, right? So that's why I say this is a cardinal mistake.
Rather find a way to be decisively different and have your own strategy and structure. Why is
Exactly.
optimizing for weaknesses a problem? If I'm very weak at one thing and I try to become less weak, is that a problem?
Yes. Yes. That's actually also a quite typical pattern, that something go on your nerves. It's difficult. You need to coordinate. You're creating conflicts, so you try to solve that. And that's what typically is done also. You're solving the problems, the weaknesses that you recognize in your organization. The typical consequence is also that the sum of all of the organizational problems stays more or less the same before or after reorganizations. So also after reorganizations, you're going to have problems, difficult areas. You have them in different areas. So the question is not if you're going to have these problems it's important to have the right problems, the homework that you have to solve. So just focusing on problems is not the right solution. You have to ask what is right first, and then out of that you're going to have to solve some homework. You have some interfaces between decision dimensions and so on that you have to work with, and therefore you need to have that kind of idea about how you're going to do that, a model, so to speak.
The sixth of your 10 cardinal sins from the book, not cardinal sins, the cardinal mistakes in organizing, is, I think, the most controversial, because you say starting with people is a mistake. And now there is this whole movement right now, not just in the US, but worldwide, of who, not how. Don't think in tasks, think in people. Find great people, give them just a ton of freedom, and everything will be fine. So why it is a problem to start with people? What should we start with?
I would say it's not a problem to involve people in the equation. The question is it in the first place or in the second place? I still would agree to say, yes, we need to involve people in the first place in the equation. But I would say the people are the customers, because that's the purpose of the organization, to satisfy a customer. Or like Peter Drucker, who I like to cite, said the purpose of a business is not making money, it's not satisfying people and making people happy. The purpose of a business is and can only be to create and keep a customer. And if you're successful in that, you're going to have happy people, and you're going to have meaningful lives, and you also make a good business out of it, by the way, right? And therefore, I'd say, yes, we have, especially if you're talking about structure, we can't take the wrong compromises around people. It's important to keep the people that we want to keep, and to allow for entrepreneurial thinking for the ones who want that, things like that. But I'd say it helps us I'd say the other way around. Let's start with what is right for the customer and what is right for the company first, and then take the compromise around the people we have and we want to have. Because it's still, that helps us taking the right compromises to decide a bad compromise from a good compromise, so to speak.
So those are the things we need to avoid, big mistakes. Now let's go to the other side of things. How do we create an environment where success is more likely, more probable, maybe even repeatable, because we are taking care of the 5 most important functions? Can you walk us through the 5 functions?
Yes, yes. We're referring here to the viable system model, or the VSM, as Stephan Beer, one of the pioneers of cybernetics science, discovered in the 50s, how he named his model. It was derived from organisms, actually, so it might be astonishing that people already in the 60s started to think about what we can learn from organisms, from our own organizations. Quite a fantastic idea, actually. Um, and he derived from what he observed from finding the general in the particular, so to speak. What is common to all of these organisms regarding their neurology, regarding their steering system? What allows them to react very quickly and precisely, like a frog catching a fly that is flying by with his tongue, for example? These were basic questions, not only the Second World War for the steering of guns in airfights, for example, but also the question about what structure allows you to hit a moving target. So the same question that the agility community has posed for processes as well. It's a good and right question, and I think they have found the right answers also. Rooted actually also in the same science of cybernetics. And for ourselves, the steering structure that Stephan Beer found in all of these organizations, he could bring them down to 5 essential variables. And the interlinkage of these variables is important enough, because we're talking about a system here. It can only work as a whole. What I observe in organizations is that they have functioning processes for themselves. Operational processes, support processes, management processes. They might even work for themselves, but they're not interlinked into one coherent and consistent decision and communication system. That's the problem, the missing neurology. And now we can say, okay, let's check if these 5 elements are in place in the right dimension also. Are they doing the job they should be doing? Is it clear who needs to do what? And communication-wise, what's the information flow around them? What's the interlinkage, the relations between these steering systems? Maybe one thing we should add, because if we say we're talking about an environment for success, I think we should define also what success means for us. And what we mean by success means being viable in the long run, not only doing business, but staying in business in the long run. Or like Stephan Beer has said it, being able to maintain a separate existence. And if you think about that, it's not only about doing business, optimizing things, coordinating things, but it's also about adaptation. It's about sensing differences that will be need to adapt in the future, normative things. And these are basically the 5 elements. So it's doing things, operations that actually should be self-organized again. So that's the principle of recursivity that we maybe have a chance to talk about as well, because it has to do with the scalability of the whole model. Second job, second steering the category, if you will, is coordination, to coordinate things, because you have overlaps in environments like same customers, same suppliers, and you need to do something about that. Otherwise, you create conflicts, or also operational dependencies. When you're using synergies, using the same sources, that creates organizational effort, coordination effort. The third one is optimizing. The fourth one is adapting. And the fifth one is the normative function. So that refers also quite well to the Sankala management model that we both have been educated with.
Yes. And You know, this does, maybe some people now listening go, oh, but I need huge departments to apply these things. Let me
Mhm.
share you guys one example. Since I've been learning this from Martin and his mentors since decades. One of the thing is when my phone is cluttered because I have all of these apps, what I did is I clustered them into 5 buckets. S1, there is how I create customer value. So there is Gmail, there is Zoom. The direct value creation of a small consultant, Gmail, Zoom. Then sometimes I have to coordinate and support those S1 activities. So S2 has my calendar and things like um, little assistants, AI assistants, and my colleagues who have assistant functions. Then S3 is the reality check and coordination of everything. My bank account, my company's bank account, cash flows, reports are in S3, which software reports to me what's actually going on. Not what I think that is going on, but what's actually going on. S4, okay, Simon, you got your present now in order, but what will be coming for you in 12 months? So that's my radar to hear, okay, what's going on outside and there, because it might be super relevant for me. For example, in S4, I have LinkedIn, or I learn more about the future actually on Twitter and on YouTube. So I have YouTube and Twitter in S4 because this is part of my radar. I listen what's going on in the markets, what's going on in technology shifts. S5, identity. I have things like of spiritual nature, or what gives me my identity, or even my yoga teacher has an app. And so there is his app in there. So this is maybe one way, if to give one example of it, a tiny, one person, a tiny unit, but with a lot of chaos, obviously. If you ask my wife, I'm a very chaotic person. I leave chaos in the kitchen, I leave chaos in the living room, everywhere I leave chaos. And so I need to organize, right? On my phone, this is how I organize in 5 buckets as a team, right? Who is doing what? And when do we meet to align? Are these the most important things? Who is doing what? So every Monday, we come together very quick. Everybody says what they're doing. My priority this week is. And on Friday, we come together again to learn. Well, first we measure, we have a dashboard, and everybody has a number that they bring. They say, these were my inputs, these were my outputs. But then we learn from those outputs. So yes, we write down the number. He made 21 calls. Simon, I added 27 subscribers. Simon, I got you on 5 podcasts. Okay, those are the numbers in the dashboard. But then we learn, is this more or less than last week? Is this more or less than the 4 weeks average before? What are we learning? Is there a strength or a weaknesses that is emerging? Is it a strength or weakness of a person, of a product, of a process? What should we repeat? What should we stop doing? That's the Friday session. I think these are examples how you can create alignment, reflectivity, learning as a small team. Would you agree?
That's absolutely true. The nicest thing on this model is because of its scalability and its general, how should I put that? Its general applicability that you really can use it for everything that needs a structure, be it your football club, your local team, or being your local community project with a customer, uh, whatever it is. You can also, and it has been applied to also to the steering system of whole states, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
I do everything, large organizations, small organizations, organizations within organizations, whatever needs a structure, a steering structure, logically it has to have these kind of 5 elements and these communication lines, and you can use it as a test, so to speak, for whatever you have in practice and use it therefore.
You
And
helped a
very
lot
often,
of cities and regions, sometimes even states, organize better because they have so many different tasks. I remember we were helping a city. They had the task of maintaining the trees, the task of educating people, the task of having a high quality of life, and the task. So 17 different tasks. And it's
Mhm.
hard to coordinate all these tasks, have one purpose, be
Mhm.
aligned.
Mhm.
And so these things works with very, very complex systems. And I've seen you helping very complex systems. What I
Mhm.
am curious about in the third part of this conversation is how you organize, because you have a small business like most of the listeners, and you cooperate with other experts, with networks, you have your own network. This is exactly the situation most listeners are in. So I will ask you how you organize and how you
Yeah.
cooperate after one word from our sponsors.
What
Yes.
if your business would run well even when you are on vacation? Discover how 1,600 business owners have regained their freedom using the Strategy Sprints blueprints. How they enjoy living their dream and watching their business scale. Get the exact checklists they use to go from stressed to fulfilled using the Strategy Sprints method. Order your copy of Strategy Sprints 12 Ways to Accelerate Growth for an Agile Business on Amazon today. And if you love it, leave us a review. For more information, head over to strategysprints.com.
How do you organize and cooperate as an entrepreneur?
Well, that structure, these five systems and their connectivity to each other, that model, so to speak, it becomes after a certain while, it becomes a way of thinking. So whatever you do, you do it through these five lenses, like your I like your example of your cell phone, how you organize that. You can't prevent doing that actually because it just makes sense because it's a natural thing. We're organized like that as well, right? We have not one brain, we have three brains with different tasks. They are
Mhm.
referred to these functions.
Three
And there's
brains. Wait, I know only two. Where is the third one?
yeah, the large one, the middle brain, and the small brain. I
Oh,
don't
in
know
the.
the exact English version of it. The cortex is the large one, system five, so to speak, the one that allows us to consciously do things.
Mm-hmm.
There's this central part of the brain that is your central information
Mm-hmm.
processing function, so to speak, where you get all these information from your senses and you make some sense of it related to your consciousness, to system five. And then you have the small part of your brain that keeps all the systems running and optimizing the whole thing,
Mm.
including the parasympathicus and the sympathicus. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert in these terms, but they're documented well actually for everybody who is interested. So they can read, for example, Seth Pierce's original work, where he's very precise about these things. Um, and then suddenly, I think one of the interesting thing is because we have been discussing the question about the people first, and I agree to a great extent to that sentence. Um, what you often find if you apply that model to your office, to your project, if you're having projects with colleagues, for example, with a customer, or we're together with teams of customers, um, and you apply that model to that structure and see, is that structure complete? Have we organized everything that we need to organize? Is it clear how system 4, the adaptiveness of this process that is typically steered by a Lenkungsausschuss, as we call it in German, steering board? Do you have the coordinating mechanisms? Do you have some self organizing capabilities? Are the jobs clear and so on? Are they organized in a good way? You can test all that. And what you often find out is that at the beginning, before you have a look at your organization through that lens, the general meaning is often it's the people. The boss is difficult, or the boss says, no, the employees are difficult, or they have other kinds of difficulties amongst them. But then if you do the structural check, you very often will find that it's not the people, it's a structure actually. It's a structure that allows for bad behavior or even fosters bad behavior. A lot of organizations are built for what I call nice weather organizations, as long as people really get along well with each other, if they like each other, if everybody is disciplined and well organized and so on,
Which
then they're
rarely happens.
working. But in reality, we have to build our organizations for average people, right? They have still to work with average people. And that's what we typically have in the organizations, although we have some genies on one side and maybe some social pathological cases on the other side.
Well, and disruptions from the outside, like tariffs, and you don't know if they last 90 days
Yes,
or 2 weeks.
yes, a lot of uncertainties. And therefore, especially that question about how low can you put down decisions? The principle here is that principle of subsidiarity, that decisions are only taken at the higher level if the lower level cannot decide it better for themselves, for example, if there's really a reason to put it up. So you're not delegating power from the central down. In a functioning organization, that's quite interesting. You're delegating it bottom up, right? That's a whole big difference. The Swiss political system is built like that, for example. It delegates power up. And all of the other European democracies, as far as I know, they do the opposite. The central state has the whole power in the first place, and then it delegates it to lower levels, for example. There's a huge difference in that, and compare it to organizations. So that's one of the learnings that you can take from the model.
I've been thinking, there is one company that I recently was working with. I think they really lived the 5 principles that you just described without knowing that they are doing it. It's called Constellation Software. Have you come across this company?
No?
Canadian company. Their purpose is to buy vertical market software businesses and to keep them forever. Basically, it's not private equity where you improve them and sell them. You buy them and you hold them forever. Perpetual ownership, perpetual partnership. And now the questions, when you are serial acquirers, the first question is, what do? Do you restructure it? And so central control, standardizing as many functions as possible, HR, purchasing, everything standardized. This is what most companies do. They do the opposite. They acquire the company and change nothing. And the decisions stay down there. All the 5 functions stay as they are. There is only one thing, a monthly spreadsheet report. That is a template because each company has to have the same report. That's it. And then there is one benefit for the company to be acquired, to be in that bigger system. And that is, okay, if I need capital, they will negotiate additional capital for me because the large organization speaks to the bank easily. That's the only thing that they do. I'm your bank and I'm the person who reads your monthly report. Please report in this way. Nothing
Question
else.
is if you can afford it to keep it like that, right? So question is, where can you allow for that freedom? Everybody takes care for themselves. And where do you have, this is exactly one of the crucial questions. In every case, when do you have to restrict that autonomy to the benefit of the whole, because it's necessary for the whole, and situations might be and change dramatically very fast, like in COVID, for example, where it changed from that, what I call the horizontal control axis, where everybody takes care for himself. I call that the horizontal control axis, like in our body, baby, and there's a vertical axis, a vertical control axis that must be in place as well and work as well. And both axes are important, and you have to be able to change from one to the other axis quite quickly nowadays, and to always find the right level. So there's businesses that will be able to survive in a market only if they're really scalable, like in all these techno businesses. I think we will have a few almost monopoles there because scalability is everything in there. And that has complete different meaning compared to another business, where you can say, well, distributing money and some investment decisions is good enough, and we don't want to, and we don't need to do more than that. That's a lucky situation, actually. And we're working in the automotive industry currently in Germany, and there is tiers one who have to answer exactly that question. We have successful businesses in their own right, but the direction into electromobility dictates another kind of thinking. We need, on one hand, to create new businesses like software-defined vehicle on one hand, and we need to start working together closer on different topics than in the past, and develop an own strategy for keeping that business, the existing business.
How do you use those VSM5 systems to cooperate with others? You are not building another huge company. You have been leading huge companies. Now you are lean, mean machine, and very cooperative. How do you do that?
Well, I have the advantage that I work together with colleagues like yourself for many years, so we have just in general the same thinking. We might discuss structures of a common project, for example, and if we do, we talk in these terms. Like, do we have what kind of system do we imply for that project? What kind of system two mechanisms do we have to adopt to make the whole thing work? And so on. So we use it as a language, and actually it is a language. It's like double entry bookkeeping, for example. It's a known language, and if the making business is complex enough, you need double entry bookkeeping. You can't do it with the old simple way anymore. Then you need to learn that language, and that model nowadays is a language. You need to have a language to talk about your decision structure in the company, and people don't. And if you get acquainted with it, and as I said, it's not difficult, it's the most natural thing since we're organized like that as well. Once you adopt it, you just can't get rid of it anymore. I think you can support that statement, right?
Totally. And I hope that, we've been in EMBAs, in MBAs, we've been also teaching there. And it's running a company is so challenging. You have a limited amount of information, a limited amount of resources, but you have to decide right now. Yeah. And you never have the full information, the full data. And maybe if you have data, but you don't have information, and then you have transformed information into the actual intelligence and wisdom. And then you have all the human complexity on top of it, needs, wants, ambitions. Yeah. So it is so complex. And decision-making and decision-taking, I wish it would be part already of my children's school curricula and then of universities and of MBAs. Are you seeing models like the VSM being more and more present?
In practice, yes, not in theory yet. I see universities who still are interested in these topics, like University of St. Gallen, Dr. Bettina Hofmann-Ribken, for example, just run a course about the model recently. Other universities in Germany are taking care of it, but that's the minority. In practice, it becomes something like the secret tip, so to speak. So the new thing, have a look at it at least. Something that you need to know, I would say, and with very good reason. Because that's really the problem that organizations have to solve. How can we decide faster and better? That's the question. And how can we have that foresight and all of that thought, and with all of that unpredictability, how can we nevertheless steer our big organizations or also our small organizations? And
this is the book, guys. Die dritte Dimension des Organisierens. If you like reading in German, the Wait. The English is The Neurology of Business by Martin Pfiffner. I read both. I like both, but I'm practicing getting better at English, so I made more notes on the English one on the Kindle version. Where can people find you, Martin? Follow your journey.
I have a website. It's called MP Consulting, and I have a YouTube channel. I'm on LinkedIn. I think the best link is just to get in contact through LinkedIn, and from there, I think you can approach also other resources that are dealing.
Martin Pfiffner. Everyone, find him on LinkedIn. It's Martin Pfiffner, Pfiffner. Thank you, Martin, for being on the show. It's always great to see you. Have a great week.
Same. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the interest, and see you soon again.
Avoid trying to do thousands of things that doesn't work. We have 274 templates for your business success. Reach your ambitious goals with one-on-one sprint coach. We double your revenue in 90 days.
What if your business would run well even when you are on vacation? Discover how 1,600 business owners have regained their freedom using the Strategy Sprint's blueprints. How they enjoy living their dream and watching their business scale. Get the exact checklists they use to go from stressed to fulfilled using the Strategy Sprint.